And hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Chris Renteria, and as you can tell, this is the May Movie Roundup. I know, I'm not releasing it in 2 months. I'm not releasing it in July. I've been a little behind on podcasting. I apologize for that, but work's done. We'll be back on a normal weekly, hopefully, weekly schedule, life permitting, weekly schedule for the podcast from now up until probably August, September, around that time. But I'll have a good few months of regular old podcasting, doing some fun stuff that I'm looking forward to. But today we are talking about the May Movie Roundup. I just released the April Roundup earlier this week, because I was late on that, but now I'm doing May. Before we get to all that, there's 2 movies in May that we won't be talking about. It is The Fall Guy and Tarot. I did a separate episode on those at the beginning of the month, pretty much. Talked about those. So if you want to, go back and re-listen to my thoughts or didn't listen to that episode, it's up on the feed. You can go check it out. That said, I still want to do the movie roundup, the monthly roundup. I think it's a good idea. But now that we are in the prime, summer movie season, right smack dab in the middle of it, some big movies are coming out. I want to be a part of that conversation, the early conversation with everybody else. So the plan is to release just one movie episode from this point forward. That is the hope. I don't want to, say that it's going to happen, because obviously I've said that that's going to happen on the podcast many times, and life has gotten in the way and said that is not the case. But that is what the plan is. Maybe some double features, maybe even some triple features some week. So three movies in one episode. That is the plan moving forward, especially here in the summer movie season, because there's just so many big movies, and talking all about them at once in one podcast at the end of the month, sometimes a month later in my case, I just, I don't want to do that, because I feel like I miss out, and then, everything that's been said about a movie has already been said, so I don't want to do that. So that is the plan. That is the hope. Hopefully that starts this week, or next week rather. Obviously Bad Boys for Life is coming out. The Watchers are coming out. Hitman's out this week. It's a big week movie-wise for releases this week, so I want to be a part of that conversation. Hopefully I will be a part of that conversation, and hopefully there's an episode early next week on that. If there isn't, I will probably push it back and still do it anyway, maybe sometime in the middle of the week or anything like that. But the plan is, especially right now in these months where I'm not, heavily working, and the podcast will be up regularly on its kind of normal semi-schedule that it was before, that will be the plan. So I don't want to, say that is definitely the plan, because I've, again, said that many times in the past on the podcast, and that's not been the case. But hopefully that's what we're going to do. But you are here to listen to the reactions of the movies that came out in May, so let's get to that. Again, Fall Guy, Tarot, now part of this conversation. So I'm going to start off with some honorable mentions. There's just some movies that I watched this month that I don't, really need to get into that much. One being the Garfield movie. Yes, I watched the Garfield movie. It's fine. It's not as bad as people are saying it is. It's not good. It's not great either. It is a kid's movie after all. Kids will probably appreciate it more, but there are some things in there for the adults. Like there's like a Top Gun reference in there. There's a Mission Impossible reference if you get it. So it's a kid's movie through and through. It's not for you. It's fine. If the new John Krasinski movie, back behind the camera for him to direct this movie, this is face value. If you just take the movie for how it is and for what it is, you can get some enjoyment out of it. If you start breaking it down and thinking about it, it starts to fall apart just a little bit. And even when you're watching it and you're like, what? It kind of ruins that enjoyment value. But just as a plain, like going in, turning your brain off and just watching it as it is, as the movie, even if you do question some things that happen in the movie, I think it's fine. I think it's enjoyable enough. I don't know, there a lot of the more reaction because it did, kind of get a jump at the box office this weekend. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how the lasting power for this movie is. But there is that. I'm going to start off. This movie came out later in the month, but I'm going to start it off here because it's a movie I didn't like. surprisingly. The Strangers, Chapter 1. Not unsurprisingly. I talked a little bit about the movie on the Summer Movie Season Preview podcast, about how I'm pretty sure I said that I was very torn about this movie because I didn't know kind of what they were going to do, what direction they were going to take, and anything like that. So and I really like the first two Stranger movies. I really liked the first one. I thought the first one was a very effective thriller, and the second one was, very much a completely different take. It took the home invasion genre and did away with it, and it was very much more of a 70s, 80s dripped slasher, and it worked. And I'm probably one of the handful of people that actually, thoroughly enjoy that movie. But with the first Strangers, not this one, the first one with Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman, I want to give a little personal story about this one. So a friend of mine, when the first movie came out, he called me up randomly so I went on a Friday night, and he called me up and he was like, hey, I want to go watch a movie. What's new? And FYI, I am the movie guy in our friend group, or in that friend group. And the only thing that made sense for us to go watch at the time was The Strangers. And I checked the show times, and there was a screening of the movie at a theater. And at the time, we used to go to that. That was a movie theater that we used to go to. And I tell him we can probably make it. So we drive and we get there, we buy our tickets, we walk in, and this showing is packed. Like, I'm sure my friend and I got like the last two open seats together, which were all the way up in the last row, all the way up on top. So we sit down, and I'm pretty sure the trailers had just stopped playing. So we got there right in time when the movie started. And we watched it. We got scared. I'm not going to, lie about that. And we had to drive through a wooded area at night because the movie theater is kind of like by the woods. All around, good time. But let's get to this. Let's get to, Strangers Chapter 1. So when it was announced, it was a question of is it a prequel? Is it a remake? And the studio, said this is a new story. And they're going to start a new trilogy of movies, all directed by Rennie Harlin. Then the trailer came out, and the tagline of the trailer suggests that it's a prequel. It says, see how the strangers became the strangers. Okay. But the footage in the movie entirety showed that it's a remake of the first movie. It's a remake of the first movie. There are, and I just saw someone online, and this irks me when I see it sometimes. It's a shot-for-shot remake. No, it's not. Stop saying that. It's not a shot-for-shot remake. Gus Van Sant's Psycho was a shot-for-shot remake. This is not a shot-for-shot remake. It is not. Anyway, Chapter 1, again, has pretty much the same concept. You got a couple. You got Ryan and Maya, played by Froy Gutierrez, and Madeline Pesci. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I apologize. Who was also a producer on this. So good for her. She's moving up. She played, I can't remember, Betty or Veronica on Riverdale. But she plays one of them. So the movie, those two, Ryan and Maya, they are on a road trip. Also happens to be their anniversary, but they're on a road trip to Portland for a big interview that Maya is supposed to have. And along the way, their car breaks down in the fictional town of Venus. It's a small town. It's like over 500 people or something like that. It's a very small town. And they end up staying in a cabin that one of the locals says is open. And of course, the old so familiar knock on the door. They open it and they see an almost too fake and ridiculously covered in darkness woman say, is Tamara home? Or is Tamara here? I forgot which one it is. To which they reply, again, of course, you got the wrong house. And then they take their sweet time leaving, still covered overly ridiculous darkness. Like, there's no reason, like, she should be that dark, like that covered in darkness. There is no, like, even with the light, fixture above her being unscrewed, there is no reason for her to be that dark. Anyway, eventually Ryan and Maya are met with the three masked strangers, and they begin to terrorize them, and the couple have to, of course, fight to survive. Like I mentioned up top, I did not like this movie. I know it's supposed to be a new story, but it completely undoes everything from the original movie. The first movie, like I mentioned, was an effective, tense horror thriller, and this relied on jump scares, which didn't really work. And the knowledge of the fans to know who the strangers are. Like, you know that these are the three strangers. You know how, you know, who these characters are. So, I mean, at least, you know, when they're masked. And I don't know, it takes a little bit to actually get going. And not in a slow burn movie way. And for a little bit, because it gets a little bit going because Ryan has to leave the house after the mysterious stranger knocks on the door one more time. Because he goes to get food because they're hungry. And he has an inhaler that, you know, only plays a factor in when it needs to play a factor in. Because, you know, he leaves the car at the garage in town. So he has to go and get to it, get his inhaler. So it's a reason for him to leave the house and have Maya by herself. And she's freaked out because, you know, they keep knocking on the door. So she decides to smoke pot. Because, you know, smoke pot and play the piano. And if I remember correctly, I think it's Beethoven that she plays. I'm not familiar with my classic works as I should be. But it's a song you would not play if you're freaked out in a house by yourself in the middle of nowhere. I'm just saying. At least I wouldn't do that. The only decent thing that comes from that is a shot of Baghead, the Baghead stranger, in the mirror behind her, which she would notice. I'm sorry, but she would notice if he was there. Like, was she playing with her eyes closed? Because you see because like the mirror is like on top of her, so like, you know, her peripheral vision must be terrible because she wasn't, you know, looking at it. Anyway, I'm going to get into spoilers because you should not waste your time with this movie. I'm sorry. You should just not waste your time with this movie. So I'm going to get into a little bit of spoilers. So timestamps are down below for, obviously, anyone not interested in that. So once the strangers get into the house, Ryan and Maya hide in different rooms, and they eventually get to the bathroom. And Maya sees a vent. And she says the technical term for it, because I think that's kind of part of her character. She's going for like a architectural job or something like that. It's basically a crawl space. So they find a crawl space. She walks in it. And this is probably the most tense part, and one of the obviously new additions to the movie from the original movie. They're crawling, and somehow she stabs herself in the hand with a nail. And the strangers, one of them is, you know, on top. I think it's not Dollface, the other one, Pinup Girl. She hears Maya scream a little bit, or not scream, but she kind of, you know, like the wince of pain, the agony of pain, and they move over, and it's probably the most tense thing in the whole movie. And it's in one of the better ones, and probably the only one really for me. And, you know, they get out, obviously. They go to the shed. They find a shotgun like they did in the original. They fire it off, scares the strangers away. They run a little bit more. Like in the first movie, they accidentally kill someone. It's the owner of the house that, you know, Maya had called earlier in the movie because the fridge had gone off or was broken or whatever. Another reason why Ryan leaves the house, because, you know, they need food. So they kill the old man, and Ryan's like, I just killed somebody. And Maya is like, it's okay, you were trying to defend us. And they see the old man's truck. And like, okay, these characters are smart. They see the truck, they get in, they make the smart decision. Ryan gets in the truck. Maya picks up the shotgun that Ryan had put to the side, and Maya had also picked up the old man's phone. So they're about to leave, and Baghead, they call him Scarecrow, by the way, in the credits. No, his Baghead. His name is Baghead. So Baghead hits the truck. A little callback to, I think, Strangers Pray at Night in there, because they pin the truck against a tree, trying to hit it multiple times, and Maya runs off because Ryan tells her to. And Ryan looks like he's about to kill Baghead, but of course he disappears. Then we get to Maya with the old man's phone, and she manages to call 911. Again, this movie does things that are like, okay, like this is what we want to see in a horror movie, but also just undoes so much by doing so many dumb things. And probably the only other kind of tense moment in the movie is when Maya decides to hide from one of the strangers. And she's hiding in this pit that we actually saw earlier at the very beginning of the movie. We saw it. And there she sees like a skeleton. So obviously this is like kind of like a death pit, basically, where they drop off the people that have died in there. And it's probably, again, the other most, because she's hiding and she puts herself in a position where she can see the stranger, but the stranger probably can't see her. Or, maybe it's the illusion that the stranger is like, nah, I see you, but I'm going to let you think you got away. cut back to Ryan, and he has this, he needs this inhaler, but he finds this water bottle, and he makes like this makeshift inhaler. Obviously it's a water bottle, so it makes all the noise in the world, but he makes it because it's necessary, and he happens to do it. So I don't know if that's real, and if it is, then, hey, new trick for all you asthmatics out there. But before he gets caught by Baghead, he also happens to disappear. And this is probably the only other like decent like cinematography shot that I like. They're running in the woods, and Ryan's looking for Maya in the woods, and all of a sudden a fog comes running in, and unbeknownst to him, he's being followed by Pinup Girl, and she loses him in the fog, and they're kind of like looking at each other in the fog, and it's a nice kind of shot of him like walking in. I appreciated that, and that's kind of another standout from the original, or standout for this movie that the original didn't have. But then here comes the dumb part. Ryan has Pinup Girl dead to rights because she doesn't see him. She loses him, but he finds her somehow, and he has her dead to rights. He has the shotgun pointed at her, and he doesn't shoot. Could have knocked her out. Could have shot her in the leg if he didn't want to kill somebody. I get it, but no. That could have, it could have made him, it could have made the movie stand out even more, made it different from the original. But no. Instead, he's asking where Maya is, and, Pinup Girl does this crazy thing, and she screams at him, and then Baghead comes out of nowhere and knocks him out. And then we cut to, of course, the also familiar shot of Ryan and Maya being tied up back in the house. And Ryan gets stabbed, and we see the strangers there. And obviously it sucks. This is a moment that we know what's going to happen, where we know they're going to die. But it's more effective in the first one. Like here, it's just like, yeah, they're going to die. Okay. But in that first one, it's like, oh, like you're just hoping something's going to happen, that they can get out of it or whatever. But no, obviously they don't. And here they don't either. And the line that a Pinup Girl, when Maya asks, why are you doing this? Pinup Girl says, because you're here. Obviously not the same effect of because you were home, because obviously they weren't home, like in the first two, like in the original movie, because in the original movie they were home. This one, that's not their house. They just happen to be there. Maya gets stabbed, and the strangers are admiring their work, and then you hear the cop cars in the back. You're like, oh, cops are actually coming. Okay, that's pretty cool. And we get a zoom in on Maya's face, but we don't find out, she doesn't open her eyes or anything until the mid-credits, because there's a mid-credits scene in the movie where Maya wakes up and she's in the hospital and alive, and she gets up, and for one last jump scare, Baghead is lying next to her. Somehow, because he is a wide man, and there is no way that both of them fit on that hospital bed, especially without her noticing. So it might be a dream, maybe it's the painkillers, whatever. Is it a dream? Is it a reality? We'll find out in The Strangers Chapter 2, because Madeline, I'm going to mispronounce her last name, but she is going to be in all three movies. Because when this was announced, it was announced that she would be in all three. So she's going to be the follow-through for all three of these movies. And they mentioned, and they already shot them, by the way. All these movies are shot. They are done. They're just, waiting for a release schedule. And Rennie Harlan, because obviously when they were doing the press tour, mentioned that the sequels would be something different. They weren't going to be home invasions. So if she's in and they all are going to take place within the same week, within the same 4 days. So all these movies are taking place in that same week. So what I'm thinking that Chapter 2 is going to be is kind of like a Halloween 2 situation. Like maybe the strangers are going to mess with her in the hospital when she's still recovering, because are they going to follow her all the way back to wherever they're from? I don't think they mentioned where they're from. So I do want to mention that this movie has Richard Brake. Richard Brake, for anybody who doesn't know, he's a character actor. He usually plays a bad guy or someone very scummy or mysterious or antagonistic, and it looks like he plays the sheriff in the movie, because he's in the diner where Maya and Ryan go. And he's there. You can clearly tell it's him. He doesn't say a line of dialogue in this movie. You see him in the trailer, that's his screen time. He's only in there, and that's the only time we see him. So my thing about this movie is the town in on it? It's a super small town. They look at Ryan and Maya like, who the hell are these big city goers? And look, I get it. Small towns and horror movies, they're supposed to be off-putting. The townsfolk are supposed to be sketchy and somewhat antagonistic to our characters. But since this is the first chapter, some of the townsfolk are given a lot of screen time. There's the sheriff, is prompt. You don't cast Richard Brake and not have him say a line of dialogue. So either his dialogue was cut, or they just want you, the audience, us, the audience, to know that he is in this universe and he will play a part in the movies. And then you have the Mormon kids, who are like creepy, and they hand out this pamphlet that makes more than one appearance, by the way. So the pamphlet, Ryan and Maya get the pamphlet when they get out the diner, and then later when Ryan finds like this burger truck, the lady there tries to give him a pamphlet again too, and he's like, "No, I already got one." So, like, is the church gonna play a factor in whatever Mormon church they're gonna play a factor in? Because the Mormon kids in the original, they didn't play a factor at all. They just showed up to find the dead bodies at the end. That's it. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm just complaining all too much about this movie, and it's not good. I shouldn't be giving it this much time, but I am, unfortunately. Yeah, and Rennie Harlan, he's very much sometimes he's got it, sometimes he doesn't. Deep Blue Sea, great. Long Kiss Goodnight, great. This year though, The Bricklayer, which is on Netflix, if you want to give that a shot, not that great. And unfortunately, Strangers Chapter 1, also not that great. And Strangers Chapter 2, there's no release date for the second one, but they're aiming for like a fall release, and then they're going to release the third one sometime next year. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fan. Not a fan of these movies, or of this movie, rather. Let's move on. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes had a massive hill to climb. It's coming off one of the best, if not the best, modern-day trilogies around. Did we need another Planet of the Apes movie? No, not really. Will we welcome, more Apes movies so we could just go back into that world? Yeah. So here we are with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, set generations after the events of War for the Planet of the Apes. And Kingdom follows a new generation of apes, mainly Noah, who is motion captured and played by Owen Teague, who, after his village gets pillaged, goes on a journey to rescue the surviving members, but comes across a knowledgeable orangutan in Raka, and a human in Noah, played by Freya Allen, and a new enemy in Proximus Caesar, played by Kevin Durant. Noah must learn new things about the past and make choices that will affect the world as he knows it. Like I mentioned, Kingdom had a massive hill to climb, and for the most part, it does a successful job of being a worthwhile and worthy sequel. It's got amazing visuals. It does touch on the, sociological question that the series is known for, and it does a great job of keeping the series going, at least in my opinion. That said, the rest of the time, it feels like it does have some pacing issues, but it also doesn't give us enough time or real details about certain characters when it should. So you really decide what you think about them just on surface level details, and you kind of have to fill in the gaps, which is not all that great. And that was probably a creative decision, since the movie was also envisioned as the start of a new trilogy. So obviously they're not going to give us all of the answers, but you got to give us some answers in your first movie. Even the teases. What am I saying? Even the teases aren't really enough, at least for me. And I don't know. I needed more. I needed just a little bit more. Just give me a little bit more. And I know it sounds like I wasn't a fan because I'm saying all those things, but I was. I did like the movie. I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought the CG of the apes is so great. Just Noah himself, there are just moments where it's like, oh my God, it just looks so good. He doesn't look as good as Caesar, because Caesar, we saw the transformation of Caesar from the very beginning, and, this young, youthful ape go from like this, very grizzled, just, I'm tired. I'm just tired, and I just want to live a peaceful life ape. And Noah's kind of in the middle of that a little bit. He's not too young, but he's also not, old enough, or not really. So I give all the credit in the world to the visual effects team for making these movies continue to look very good. There are some dodgy parts of the movie, but this is still a very, very good looking movie. If anything, this is visually a very, very good looking movie. And for the most part, this movie is a journey movie. You get out, once you get the village raid out of the way, it becomes Noah on the road to finding his people. And then the final act becomes, again, just this giant, big set piece, which is cool to watch. And I want to delve, once again, a little bit into spoilers here. So here's a spoiler warning. I want to give a little bit of surface level details. And this is mainly about Freya Allen's Nova, whose real name is May. Because Raka says they call them all Nova. They call all the women Noah. It was just, again, very, very funny. And of course, nice little, homage to the little girl from War of the Planet of the Apes, because they call her Noah, but also from the original, movie as well. And this isn't anything against, Alan, but the Nova May, we'll just call her Nova or May. I'll just call her May, because that's her real name. Her name is May. She uses Noah to get what she wants. It's the hard drive from the bunker that Proxima Caesar is trying to get into. But we really don't know anything about May, and again, this is where I think that she's like gonna be the person that we discover more along as the series gets going. We know she lost people, but she wants and thinks that the world can go back to the way it was before. She wholeheartedly believes that, and makes her actions maybe to some selfish, but since she believes it, it makes them necessary and right. Even after William H. Macy, who, shout out to him for appearing in the movie for a little bit, as Trevathan, who was helping Proximus, which I thought was very funny, teaching him the old ways. And of course, Proximus Caesar takes up the Roman Empire approach of history. He tells her, you can't go back. We can't go back to the old way. We had our chance, and it's over. It's not our world anymore. It's the apes. And when you look at it, it's true. The whole reason why the world is the way it is because of the virus. And the reason there are so few humans, especially ones that can still talk, because we see the humans in the loincloths, which, again, another great, nod to the original series. They can't talk. They're very more, basic, natured people. They just go, they need water, they go to the river. These humans did not get the immunity. With the humans that are talking, like May, like Trinathan, they have immunity. They, were lucky, and they're out in the world at that. Because, it says that, you spend enough time with the apes, you develop the virus. They've been around the apes for so long that they didn't get the virus. And when May talks in the movie, it's like a shocker to Raka and to Noah. It's like, oh, she can speak. That's amazing. That's also very dangerous, which is why, they want her so bad. And the humans in the bunker that we see, they've probably been in that bunker since the very beginning. So when the woman in the hazmat suit, played by Dechen Latchman, I think that's how you pronounce her name, she's wearing the hazmat suit, and from just meeting her, and then she goes back inside and she takes it off, obviously. May doesn't know that they can get a cure. May doesn't know if there even is a cure, if the people in the bunker have immunity. She hopes so, and she thinks, giving them back communications can lead to that, but she doesn't know. And I'm happy they address that a little bit in the movie, at the end when Noah and May are talking for one last time. May sticks to her conviction, and she says that she did the right thing and humans will take back the planet, even though she says that it was theirs first. Not really. It wasn't really yours first, but, we'll dive back into that, maybe in the future. And Noah, in turn, questions whether apes and humans can coexist, especially since, apes have run the world and are running the world. Plus, if it wasn't for Noah, an ape, humans couldn't potentially get a chance, and they couldn't get that, drive to communicate with the satellites and communicate with each other. So they need each other in this world. And I thought that was that was played out so perfectly that it gives you, the argument for both cases. But if you're, obviously this is a Planet of the Apes movie, I think we're going to side with the apes more than anything. So obviously this trilogy is going to, focus on the push and pull relationship between May and Nova, and who's right and who's wrong, if there even is a who's right and who's wrong. And I'm sure Proximus's words to Noah, will ring true at some point. Did you betray your own kind for selfish humans? Would Proximus have been able to figure out what was, how to use everything in the bunker? That's the other thing. Would he have been able to use it? Would he be able, like at that point, Ternathan, he doesn't know that Ternathan is dead. And, I'm sure Ternathan would have been like, he's all about, self-preservation. You make yourself useful to Proximus, you'll be happy and you'll live a, long, good life. So he probably would have taught him how to use all that stuff. Again, presuming that Ternathan knows how to use all that stuff as well. And what happened to those people in that bunker? Like, did they never make it to that bunker? I mean, there's obviously looked like people were living in that bunker, but what happened to them? That's never addressed in the movie. I mean, that bunker is huge, so I don't know. Well, and now it's flooded, so there's no reason to see that. Also, what made the apes separate and create clans? Because, when the movie even opens up with the ending of War, where, all the apes are, together, and they're like, we got to stick together. Caesar died for us, and he died so we can all live together. And then you cut generations later, and there are tribes everywhere, and there's clans everywhere. So what made them do that? And the more important thing, what did they see in the telescope? What did Noah see? Was it just the stars? He was like, he's never seen the stars before. Was it a satellite maybe that he saw? Was it a, you want to go super sci-fi? Was it a wormhole? What was it? What did he see? What did he show? I forgot. I didn't put her name, but the other ape that he likes. What did May see? Because May also saw it, and then maybe it was a satellite, and that's why she was like, "Oh, there's still time. There's still hope." Maybe that's what she saw. I don't know. So many questions. So many theories that we can throw out and mull over until the next one comes out. Don't know when the next one's coming out. They haven't really announced it. I'm sure they will. This movie did pretty well. Did pretty well. Obviously the box office is for some reason a major question this year. But I think it's done well, and obviously they had a plan. I'm assuming they're going to stick to that plan. I look forward to seeing the next one. That's just me. Let's move on to the next movie. In a violent nature, this movie will definitely not be for everyone. and I'm putting horror fans in that conversation. This is a slow burn, if there ever was any. The movie follows a killer. It's told through the killer's perspective. We follow Johnny. That's his name. That's the name of the killer. We do get a little bit of his backstory when he's spying on a group of our victims, and we always follow him. And I mean, always follow him. There are scenes where we are just following him around as he's walking in the woods. There's no score, so when he's walking around, you hear the leaves in the ground underneath him, all the crunching and everything. And it can get a little tedious. And like, okay, we get it. You're just walking in the woods. All right, let's just move on. I will say there's a very cool shot later in the movie of him walking when the sun is setting and like he's in a field. That's very cinematic. I really like that. If I can take that snapshot, that'd be really great. But also when Johnny is walking around, it can feel like an open world game. Like you're in control of Johnny and you're walking around, and the whole point is like you're walking around the woods until you finally cross someone, and then you got to kill them in the most creative way possible, in the most creative and brutal way possible. Because there is a scene when you see him set up. There's even a scene when you see him set up a kill. Like he like puts a stick on a car's horn, and then you see him walk away from it, walking around a house to basically double back. So, when someone's like, what is this? Like, what's going on? And then he goes in for a kill. It's ridiculously crazy. You never see it from that perspective, but it's pretty funny. And the kills. Let's just talk about the kills. Not all of them, but there is one that gets highlighted. And good God, I will call it a kill with the view, but some people are calling it the yoga kill. And when you remember that this movie is done on a low budget, because this is all but an independent horror movie, for sure. What they were able to pull off what the director, the writer was able to pull. I think his name is Chris Nash. I didn't put his name on, but if I remember correctly, it's Chris Nash. And he's a effects guy. So obviously the effects of this movie were going to be very good. What they were able to pull off creatively of that kill, of the yoga kill. Holy shit. Seriously. My theater reacted. It was a small theater. There wasn't, there was like a group, there was like little groups of us, throughout it. We all reacted properly. We all reacted the same way of like, holy shit, this is absolutely crazy. And we're all laughing just because your instant reaction is to laugh at how ridiculous that kill was. There's another kill in the movie later. It's very tedious. And it's like, oh, okay, like, oh, this is why is it so slow? Why is he so, this is crazy. Even when you kind of understand maybe why it's happening, there's a certain point where he's just like, especially at the end, there's a certain point where he's like, he just snaps. Johnny, the killer, just snaps. And he's like, no, like, you mess with me. I'm tired. I've been walking around for days. I'm tired of it. I'm going to end this today. And I'm going to do it in the most brutal way possible. So when we get to the victims, to the characters, they are pretty poorly written. And part of me wants to assume that it's on purpose and it's intentional because it's calling back to those old kind of 70s, 80s horror movies where, obviously, the characters are either poorly written, or, they're just the most terrible people. And because it's told through Johnny's POV, maybe that's how he's interpreting them talking. But the characters are, the writing is very, very thin. It's kind of poor. And I want to say it's intentional. I don't think it's, the actor's fault. I think it's intentional. But there's not much to them. We have a stoner. We have the relationship that has our final girl, a friend of our final girl that is going through something, and like it's teased that maybe they had something originally. So the boyfriend is like very jealous. He's the classic boyfriend. The stoner is the one that, is knowledgeable and is, I guess he lived there or his uncle lived in the town. So he's the one that tells, the story of Johnny. And again, there's not too much of them. And because, it's told predominantly from, Johnny's POV, we don't learn too much about them. We only learn about them when Johnny is stalking them, basically. And the campfire scene is the closest thing that we get to really them, getting to know them at all. And it's our final girl and what they do with her at the end that may be a divide, and even another divide for viewers. Interestingly enough, they bring in Lauren Marie Taylor, best known for playing Vicky in Friday the 13th Part 2. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, I didn't know she was in the movie. And when like they closed up on, and when they showed her, I was like, she has to be someone. Because this movie is just drenched with like homages, and like you can tell that, they pay like Nash and everybody else on the crew are big horror fans, and they have a respect for the horror genre. And they're, doing their best, Friday the 13th kind of, I won't say knockoff because that would be disrespectful to the movie, but kind of, Friday the 13th like movie. And when they bring in, Taylor, I think that was kind of like their like nice little, I'm not saying she's playing Vicky, but, it's a nice little, homage to that. And the ending, what they do with her and what they do with the final girl, I forgot to put down her name. It's an idea and thing I think we never see, and we want to see. Like, what happens after all the terrible things you saw and went through? And especially her, because she sees something that's like, okay, and she sees multiple things that happen. It's like, oh yeah, like that would probably mess up somebody. What do they go through? How long does it take? Like, are you going to be like this, super strong person that gets through it? Or are you going to be this bumbling mess? Or are you just going to be in a state of eternal shock and you can't, say anything? The scene itself is fine. It's great. It's again, it shows you like what happens afterwards. It's what happens after the movie, after the credits roll, but we're actually seeing some of it. And the scene itself is fine. I think it goes on a little too long, personally, but I think it's kind of, especially what they do at the with the final girl, because they change perspective and they do this very like cool camera thing where it's like, okay, it's Johnny's point of view, and then it changes to the point of view of our final girl. And what they do with her like the final shot of her and the final shot of her kind of like looking out into the distance, I think is so, like, looking back at it, I was like, oh, it's so good. That's actually very, very cool and very effective at what they did. So that said, I personally probably wouldn't recommend In a Violent Nature overall without letting you know like certain things in context. Like knowing that the movie is an independent movie. Accepting the fact that you're following a killer from behind walking in the woods for like half of the movie. And you're following him for like minutes at a time. There's no score. There's no jump scares, which will probably, help anybody who's like, oh, I want to watch horror movies, but I'm not a fan of jump scares. This movie has no jump scares. So if you want to, get into that. Although, that said, this probably isn't like I want to jump into horror movies. Let me jump into it. No, don't choose this movie because you'll just like, if you're not a fan of horror movies, you're not gonna like this. It's got heavy amounts of violence. When the kills come in, you're like, yeah, that's what I'm here for. There's another one that involves a rock. That's like I thought that was going to happen, but the way they did it and like the effect of it was like, oh, that's more than I thought it would be, which is pretty cool. I don't know what's wrong with me. It's a horror movie. You're going for the kills. You know what you're going in for. And this movie delivers on the kills. I will say that. Okay. Let's move on to our final movie, which is Furiosa. So after years of teasing it, George Miller has finally given us another Mad Max movie, and it's not just any other Mad Max movie. No, it's a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road. In Furiosa, of course, mainly focused on the Charlize Theron standout character from Fury Road, Furiosa. And in Fury Road, he gave us, teases and the bare bones probably of Furiosa's backstory, enough that what we needed to know. But now we finally get to see it. So the story, a young Furiosa, played by Aaliyah Brown, at the beginning, is taken from the Green Place by a group of marauders that we learn are working for Dementus, played by Chris Hemsworth, a warlord, of course, in the Wasteland, who wants to take over everything. He wants to take over the Wasteland in general. So we follow Furiosa as she grows up with Dementus, and then as the story grows and the story keeps going, she eventually goes to Immortan Joe, who is played by Lachie Holme, I think that's how you pronounce his name, after the passing, of course, of Hugh Keys-Byrne, who passed away a couple years ago. I forgot when he passed away, but he's passed away. Of course, he played Immortan Joe in Fury Road, but Holme does a very good job of playing Immortan Joe in this movie. And learn the skills that, of course, Furiosa needs to learn the skills to survive the Wasteland to get her revenge on Dementus overall. Because not obviously, but the majority of this movie is a revenge movie. I enjoyed Furiosa for what it was. Miller continues to prove that he can direct a great-looking action movie. He's almost 80, or he's in his 80s, and he's still directing movies like this. That is phenomenal. Unlike Fury Road, Furiosa feels like it has a story. I love Fury Road. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love Fury Road. But Fury Road is very much a giant chase movie, and it's very much a get to point B from point A until you realize that point B is no longer an option, so we have to race back to point A. Furiosa, like I mentioned, is a revenge story. All in all, is a revenge story. It's an odyssey at that. A Furiosa who gets kidnapped from the Green Place that we do see briefly, and we see her mother try to get her back, and unfortunately gets caught and gets killed in front of her. And Furiosa, again, gets held captive by Hemsworth's Dementus, and then traded to Immortan Joe. And then that's where she learns everything that she needs to. And she has to blend in because obviously she's a girl and she doesn't want to be one of the wives. She escapes. Very early on, she learns how to adapt. She cuts her hair. She has this peach pit with her along the way that her mother gives her. And eventually, as she grows up, she meets Praetorian Jack, played by Tom Burke, a rig driver that pretty much teaches her the ways of being a rig driver, and promises to get her freedom. And there's a little bit of connection. There's a bit of attraction, if you will, between the two, but it doesn't get in the way. It's not, it's hinted at, but it's not like overly, there. So it's nice. And then, of course, Furiosa eventually sees Dementus again, and all of those feelings come back to her. And it's about, getting back at Dementus, who is still trying, of course, to take over the Wasteland after years and years of trying to do it. So I mentioned Fury Road. I mentioned this already, so let's talk about it. Let's ask the question, the big question: is Furiosa better than Fury Road? The answer for me is no, but that doesn't mean that Furiosa is a bad movie. It's not. Furiosa is a pretty good movie. It's a very enjoyable movie. And it is filled, like Fury Road, with incredible looking action sequences, amazing cinematography by Simon Duggan, and great performances by Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth. Because Chris Hemsworth arguably steals the show. Hemsworth is having so much fun playing the villain. He chews up every bit of scenery he's in. And seeing him go from this sort of like cult-like leader at the beginning where he's like suave and he's his character is not like, oh, I rule over you. His character is very much like, no, you guys can do your own thing. I'm in charge. You guys can do your own thing. But if you cross that line, then you're going to have to deal with me. That's kind of the leader he's at. And then as, the movie progresses and years pass, he's no longer like this, like jovial, like, oh yeah, like I'm, you're young and look at me, look at my abs kind of guy. He is a very much broken down, very haggard looking, broken down man by the end of the movie. Still a little eccentric. His character is very eccentric. You can say that. But it's a nice mirror to kind of Furiosa a little bit too. Because Furiosa is this adventurous, overeager, young, smart girl who isn't afraid to fight back. And as she grows, she has to learn, obviously, things to survive the wasteland. And when she's finally old enough and she thinks she's ready, she does so in the most epic way possible. She reluctantly teams up with Burke's Praetorian Jack that teaches her the ways. She gets the job done. She doesn't complain about it. She doesn't, and he is like, we don't get a lot of him, but he's very much like a no nonsense, like, you get the job done, we're not going to have a problem. And Anya Taylor-Joy is very good in here too. And she doesn't say much. Obviously, that's one of the big things. Like, Tom Hardy doesn't have a lot of lines. Anya Taylor-Joy doesn't have a lot of lines. So a lot of her acting is, where Tom Hardy was a lot of like grunts and like hooves. Anya Taylor-Joy is very much more stares. And of course, she has this very unique face and it helps her a lot. But she also brings this aggression to it. And everything she does to get back to the green place, even though it's been, 20 years since we learned in Fury Road, she wants to get back to it. But that linear thinking of, I'm getting back to that place no matter what. It's not right now, because I can't right now. But I made a promise to my mother that no matter how long it takes, I'm returning back to the green place. I'm going home. It doesn't matter who's in my way. It doesn't matter how I have to get there. If I have to use someone to get there, then I will do that. And again, it's just a nice little mirror to the Dementis, who's like, yeah, like I'm going to get what I want no matter who's in my way. Obviously, he has a much more, villain side of doing it. And Furiosa is very much more like, I don't want to hurt anybody, but I will if I have to get to what I want. I thought that was very cool. So let's talk about the action, because the thing with Fury Road was that the action is top notch. Nothing has been done like this. Nothing is probably ever going to replicate this. And the fact that they did a majority of that with practically nothing to either little CG is incredible. Again, especially at the age of George Miller. And here with Furiosa, Miller continues to do some new things, and you can tell that a great chunk of it was done practically, but it does feel like they used more CG in here than they did in Fury Road. And it's noticeable. And there's one shot where it's extremely noticeable at the very beginning. You're like, why? Like, was that in reshoots? That they just run out of money? Like, what happened there? And it's so noticeable. And it just took me out of it. I was like, why would you do that? And then, you get later in the movie when you see all the action, it's like, okay, yeah, you can see where he uses CG there. It's like, yeah, you probably had to use CG there, but it's like, what made Fury Road so good and so memorable to a lot of people was like, you can tell that stuff was done practical. Yeah, you can tell where the CG is. But here with Furiosa, it's like, you can tell immediately what's CG and what's not. Which is a bummer. But it doesn't stop it from being... It does not stop it from being impressive, rather. And the action scenes also set themselves apart from Fury Road. Obviously, we have a few exceptions with, of course, the introduction of Praetorian Jack, and then Anya Taylor-Joy's Furiosa, because Anya Taylor-Joy, by the way, I forgot to mention this, she doesn't appear in the movie until an hour in. It's like an hour, almost an hour into the movie. She does not appear. You're sticking with Aaliyah Brown's Furiosa for a long time, and then you get Anya Taylor-Joy. But the scene I'm talking about is the rig getting attacked. And you get Jack, and that scene is very much, I would say that scene is much more Road Warrior than Fury Road, because it's a rig, and it reminded me more of Road Warrior than Fury Road. Even though you have the War Boys, and you have this very you have these, characters, riding ATVs and everywhere around. It very much more Road Warrior-esque than Fury Road. The other standout scene in there for me was the bullet farm sequence, which really makes you understand how Praetorian Jack is much more just than just a rig driver. He gets very physical. He's, doing shootouts and everything. And then you see Furiosa. It's a very good scene. Puts the two characters, like, these two characters are perfect together. That is a scene that shows them that they are perfect together, and they are a very deadly duo for anyone that stands in their way. And that was very cool. So if anything, the bullet farm sequence is also top tier. All that said about this movie, this is the longest Mad Max movie, and you do feel the length. You do feel it. You do. And this movie is broken into chapters, each focusing on one new thing that Furiosa has to do or learn. And there's a reason why I mentioned Odyssey at the beginning, because it very much feels like an Odyssey in a lot of ways. And it shows its length. And part of me is trying to figure out, ever since I saw it, what could I have cut? What could I have trimmed? What would I cut? What would I have trimmed? And I can't do it. I can't figure it out. Like, there's probably something, like the whole thing, like the whole storyline with Rictus, where, she's a little girl and Rictus takes her away, and, I don't know what he was going to do with her in that room full of creepy ass dolls, but I probably would have cut that out. But also would have showed, like, that started the transition from Aaliyah Brown to Anya Taylor-Joy, because she has a wig and that's how she gets away. But, like, the wig gets caught in like a tree branch, like, out, and then you kind of see it grow, and you see a tree grow and everything like that. So that kind of shows you the progression of time a little bit. But like, I don't know, like, you probably could have done another way. Like, I don't know. I do want to mention some of the Immortan Joe group dynamic that we got going on. Like I mentioned, Homo does a great job taking over as Immortan Joe, because obviously the original actor passed away, but he does a very good job. He has the physicality of it, which is very good. But the majority of the Citadel story revolves around his sons, and I already mentioned Rictus. He has a new son in Scrotus. Yes, the names are ridiculous. Played by Josh Hellman, who played one of the original War Boys. The war boy that Nicholas Hoyt's character teams up with. So he's back and he's playing this character. And Scrotus, I learned, is actually a character and the main villain from the video game Mad Max that came out after Fury Road. So you got that connection. But Scrotus, nowhere to be seen in Fury Road. So I didn't play the game, so I don't know what happens to his character. But I'm assuming something happens to his character there, so which is why he's not in Fury Road, maybe. I don't know, but like you don't, like, they never mention him, so I was like, why even bother having him here? Like, you just have another villain character. Anyway, I liked Fury Road. I liked Anya Taylor-Joy. I really liked Chris Hemsworth and what they brought to the table. I enjoyed watching the action. I enjoyed the cinematography. I liked being back in that world that Fury Road created. Again, did I like it as much as Fury Road? No, but that doesn't mean that this is a bad movie, and it also doesn't mean that this is a bad Mad Max movie. This is a very good movie regardless. So there you go. So I'm gonna go into a little bit of some spoilers for Furiosa here, just very quickly. The ending of the movie, I want to talk about the ending, because it delves into the idea of, like, myths and folklore just a tiny bit, because we get some narration throughout the movie. It's a very Mad Max thing. We get narration. And in the final, right before the final act of the movie, we get narration. There's a 40-day war between Joe's men and Dementis' men. And then we get the final showdown between Furiosa and Dementis. And you would think it's this epic car chase. No. Furiosa finds him, runs him down, and messes with him a little bit. And she beats the crap out of him, and then there's a lot of dialogue. And this is the majority of Anya Taylor-Joy's dialogue comes from this conversation with Dementis. And the narration mentions stories that people think that what Furiosa did to Dementis. That she simply just shot him in the head. That she used that she silenced him before, walking him across the desert. And during the press tour, Anya Taylor-Joy said that they actually shot the scene where the silencing him meant that Furiosa cut off Dementis' tongue, which would have been very interesting because obviously Dementis is very much of a talker, and that would have been very interesting to see that scene play out in the movie. Here's hoping to, an extended, cut on Blu-ray or anything like that. She did whatever torture they did to her mother on him. But then the narrator, which is supposed to be the history man, I assume, tells us, the audience, that Furiosa actually told him what she did to him. And what she did to him was she put him all the way on top of the Citadel and planted the peach tree that she'd been carrying throughout the whole movie, and has it growing out of Dementis. And then we see that very gnarly shot of the tree growing out of him pretty much through, his groin area, and Dementis, being this very sickly, very skinny old man that is obviously going to die of just, nutritional, the tree's keeping him alive, but it's also killing him. So that was very interesting. And it's crazy to think, because then you think about Fury Road. The big thing here is the actress change. You don't really get a sense of time unless, it's very noticeable. The tree scene, I mentioned earlier, Furiosa, you get this. I didn't mention earlier when Furiosa is blending in with Joe's men. She is very much covered up because obviously she's trying to hide the fact that she's a girl. But they obviously use kind of CGI a little bit on her because they make her look very small before she grows up into, the character that we see at the end of the movie. Because we don't know how long she's been traveling with Jack either. We assume it's years, because obviously she mentions 20 years since she's been gone from the Green Place. So the span of this movie is 20 years, regardless of what it is. But it's lining up. The end of the movie literally lines up Fury Road and look, Anya Taylor-Joy, very great actor. She's great. She's not as tall as Charlize Theron. Obviously, she's not as old enough as Charlize Theron. But this movie wants to make you believe that they are the two, that the Anya Taylor-Joy version of Furiosa and the Charlize Theron version of Furiosa are the same person. Because this movie shows you that she takes a peach that she obviously grew from the tree to the wives. You see all the wives. Then I don't think they're played by the same characters or by the same actors, because you see them from far away and they're lit enough where it's them. But they're lit in a way it's maybe they got the old actresses back, but no, they didn't. And then you see them sneak onto the rig that Furiosa drives in Fury Road. And it's a bit of a stretch to be because they show Furiosa and they show that it's still Anya Taylor-Joy's Furiosa. So it's very much they're the same person. It's no, they're not the same person. That's a bit of a stretch. I get it, why they did it, but come on. Come on. I did though, that it feels at times, especially near the end, that it does sound like they blended Anya Taylor-Joy's voice with Charlize Theron's voice to make it sound like she's Charlize Theron. I thought that was very cool. I didn't notice it at first, but they do. I think they do it a couple of times. But I didn't notice it at first. And then the second time they did it, I was oh, it's interesting. That she, did they get Theron back, or they just, get a line from the old one? I thought that was interesting. All this talk about Fury Road, there is a Mad Max cameo in the movie from far away, but a cameo nonetheless. You get a little shot of him and the Interceptor, which I think was really great. All in all, again, I liked Furiosa, even despite some of the small things. But overall, it's a good movie. It is. Just don't compare it to Fury Road, because then you're not going to say it's a good movie. It's a good Mad Max movie. Is it long? Yes, it is long. But it gives you enough cool action stuff and even cool character stuff that's yeah, you can enjoy this movie. Yeah, this is a good movie. It is a very good movie. And it's a shame that it's failing at the box office, but there you go. All right, that is what I got for you. That is the May movie roundup. Thank you very much for dealing with me and enjoying it. I am going to try to do my plan that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, and try to do it next week with Bad Boys and The Watchers and maybe even Hitman. But gonna make no promises on that. that's just the plan. That's, plans fail sometimes. But thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. I very much appreciate it. As always, make sure to check out all the links down below in the description/show notes area to keep up with the podcast on social medias and the podcast platforms. And as always, go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!